60th Street, and the address is typed over, and it's got 5328 First Avenue North, and on the inside, this is it. On the inside, it says Woodlawn Moving Day is Sunday, August 18th, and there's an article about how proud they are to be in the building, how wonderful the building is. It was a real nice building, and I know the church was really thrilled about moving to this new location. It was a larger building, and now I did attend 60th Street one time. I had an uncle that attended, and I was there one time. I'd like to read an article out of the first bulletin from Woodlawn. First baptism in the new building. We witnessed Sunday night, September 1st, 1957. It made us very happy to see Mr. Harlan Tanner be baptized for remission, forgiveness of his sins, baptized into Christ. Harlan has been attending Woodlawn for quite a long time. He regularly attends Wednesday night Bible study on Tuesday night, August 27th. He met for about a 3-hour Bible study period with the writer. Harlan was open-minded when he was shown the scriptures, what it takes to become a child of God. He did not quibble nor seek to minimize the importance of God's way. And Jack Meyer Jr. was a preacher at Woodlawn at that time. The elders were Oscar Romine, Ernest Currington, C.C. Taggart, Felix McDonald, and Herman King. The minister was Jack Meyer Jr. And I'm not sure where I fit into this picture. Gene and Leroy were at the first building. Ruby and I got married August 30th, and this moved into the building, September. Moving day is August 18th. So we got married August 30th, and then we went on a honeymoon to Smoky Mountain, and then we had to break away gently from Childersburg. So we were off and on at Woodlawn for probably all that year. So probably 1958 was our, I'm not sure about that, but I don't know how we fit into that picture. But we did, Charles McDonald, and not the one we know here, Felix McDonald's son married us, and he said, my dad's an elder at Woodlawn, and you're going to attend Woodlawn. So we did. So, we didn't have much choice in the matter. Bill Threet came, and I don't remember much about Jack Meyer Jr. I do know we bought a Bible from him, and we still have the Bible. I guess it's our family Bible. It's a Thompson Chain Reference Bible, and he sold those. And I have some interesting figures. Where's Brother Moon? Is he gone? There. 1959, the preacher's salary was $95 a week. Contribution for April 1959 was $22.24.22, $2,224.22 for the month. Coal for the preacher's residence, $14.47. And utilities was $104.32. Now, utility for one day is that much now. October 1961, the contribution was $33.83.29. The minister's salary $105 a week, and he got an auto expense of $25 a month. 1963, the budget was $610 a week. The minister's salary was still $105 a week in a car expense. 1967, the preacher's salary was $165, and the budget was $900 a week. And I didn't write down the contribution, but budget was $900 a week in 1967. Jim Hayes, Rex Moore, Paul DeToro, Wendell Gann, and Henry Hufford were hired as personal work directors at Woodlawn. And Bill Threet was the preacher after Jack Meyer, and then L.E. Wisham, and I remember him very well, L.E. Wisham. I saw an article there about Jack Myers. He said he did not have a disagreement with the elders, but he had a meeting in Virginia, and when he got back home, they called him and asked him to come to work up there. He said, we had no problem with the elders, but then he went on to say, I'm moving to Virginia, and I don't have a problem with the elders. People said I was too young, and some things like this, and he said, I did not have a problem. So it leads me to believe that there was a little disagreement. So I don't know, but there's a pretty good article about that, about a page and a half in one of the bulletins, why Jack Meyer left. So I know he was a young guy. I said he was 25 when he came to work for the church, but it's kind of ironic that I think Brother Jerry was not much older than that when he came. But Ellie Wisham was an older guy, and the thing I remember about Brother Wisham is he had so much Bible knowledge he couldn't finish a lesson in one service. He had to continue it over to Sunday night. He could just talk on and on and on. He like Gus Nichols, could just keep on talking. And then 1966, a young guy named Jerry Jenkins from Huntsville, and he was preaching in Hamilton with his family, moved to Woodlawn, and he stayed until he passed away. I thought it was interesting in several of the bulletins. David Donaldson was supported for a deaf work, and I think he was paid $100 a month. I'm not sure. And Rick may know, he may have worked at Sandusky. I'm not sure, because Sandusky did start a deaf work. And one of the problems we had at Woodlawn starting a deaf work is churches would start a deaf work and then it would end, and they would start it and end. And so it was an off and on thing, and they thought we would do the same thing, In 1973, there was a TV program statewide called The Search, and we allowed people to call in and ask questions, and they were answered on the air. Several of the preachers in Birmingham, and I know Brother Fowler, Brother Jenkins, I don't remember the rest of them. Anybody remember? On the Search program? Guy and Wood.
There were several men that came in.
Tom Warren, Guy and Wood. Okay. I knew there was several on it, and it was a statewide program, and had real good results. But in Brother Herman King took an interest in Maryland Glass, working with Tim Tucker's two children that were deaf. And he noticed that, and he saw that they were learning and they could be learning. Johnny Tucker's kid, Tim's sister, brother and sister. Okay. So this is April 1979, Birmingham Bible School for the Deaf was started, and it continued. I have a lot of stuff here. The eldership changed during the Woodlawn years. Brother McDade was added while Bill Threet was minister, and he served. The elders were W. Anderson, Herman King, C.C. Taggart, and Howard Todd. In 1974, Brother Taggart and Brother King, in addition to them, Leroy Owens, Saul Godwin, Hiawatha Easton, James Lawler, and Clyde Hall. In 1975, Jack Taggart, and 1981, Norman Oakes and Ansel Norris. 1965, a house was purchased in over where it is, Crestwood. Monthly payment is $153.59. How many houses sell for that now? The house had 3 bedrooms on one level, completely finished. It sold for $24,500. I have a...
One thing on your list of people, Henry Huffman retired, he was seeking JCA, he worked with the youth. And one of the things I remember about him, Jimmy Bussett, that when he was at home, they would meet each Sunday night, and they would have a lesson. It would be based on Jerry's sermon the night before, the Sunday before, on that Monday. That way, I thought it was very
Yeah, Henry Hufford was principal or headmaster or something. I think they call him headmaster at JCA. And he led singing, taught the youth group, and then had the class. I'm sorry.
I think I cried when he left. He was my favorite thing.
Yeah. Where is Nia? I got a note from Sandra Mann. She wanted it read.
So Brother Ansel asked me to read this note from Miss Sandra Mann. It's called Woodlawn Memories. It says, the year was 1972. I remember the year because Meryl and I were married shortly after I began worshiping at the Woodlawn Church. A friend told me she had been rejuvenated by Woodlawn's new dynamic young preacher, Jerry Jenkins. Later that year, Brother Jerry married Meryl and I, and years later baptized Meryl. By the way, Brother Jerry was a dynamic speaker and a minister to all. One of the first couples I met was Saul and Ellen Godwin. I know Saul has not always been an elder, however, I can't remember a time when he wasn't. Ellen came to me and asked if I would like the church to host a bridal shower for me. I really did not know many people, so I was deeply touched by Ellen's offer. Through the years, Ellen and others have encouraged countless brides and parents to be by hosting showers. Brother C.C. Taggart taught the Wednesday night class I attended. I remember it like it was yesterday. As class began on time, Brother Taggart had a clipboard and would call roll. At this time, I was a working mother and all that involves. However, when Brother Taggart called my name, I was determined to be in attendance and answered present. Every time Brother Herman King would greet me before service, he told me he loved me, as I'm sure he told everyone, but I felt so insignificant and his words warmed my heart. In his later years, Brother King suffered a stroke and was unable to speak. His glass was always half full, as he viewed his new disability as an opportunity to draw closer to our deaf congregation and communicate with sign language. Every time thereafter, as I met Brother King at service, he continued to mouth out to me his love. Woodlawn, Roebuck Parkway congregation is my family. Sandra Mann.
Thank you. I remember Sandra's dad. He was a top mechanic in Birmingham area, and I think he was a GM mechanic, but he ran a shop out in Inslee, I think, Inslee, somewhere out that way, and he was a top mechanic in the Birmingham area. One story I'm going to tell, when we moved to Birmingham, I had an automobile, and Gene and Leroy had a television. And you know where this is going. We'd pick them up, and we'd go to their house and watch TV. So we've been friends for a long time.
One thing about that is, you tell people never forget when they have visit. Clyde and Vernon Fagan. Clyde and Vernon Fagan come by and visit.
Not on or something.
Turn this one on.
What I've been told is, that, or it seems that happens, that whenever someone is visited, they never forget it. And that was the case, as Gene and I had only been there very short. I was converted in October the 20th, 1957. And anyhow, they had been down and visited you and Ruby, and then Clyde's the one that wound up setting that up for you to come watch our TV and give us a ride to church.
I think Clyde and Vernon came to visit us. I know Jack Meyer and Clyde did.
Been there before they come to our house.
This bulletin is addressed to Jack Meyer Jr., 5129 8th Avenue South. Has a stamp around it. Anybody know how much that stamp is?
3 cents.
No. 1 cent. That's a 1 cent stamp. Brother Godwin had something to say. He can come up here. He's not old. He can come up
I just want to tell you about one thing. When we moved to Birmingham, I was preaching in Maplesville, and we attended Woodlawn, and Gene and Leroy would come by and pick Ellen up. When I finished preaching down there in 1972, 73, 74, somewhere in that area, we were in the bus ministry. We had some problems, real problems. So we had 3 elders at the time. We had Brother Taggart, Brother King, and Brother Todd. So they thought that, this is 1974 now, they thought that they needed some more elders, and so they appointed 4 elders, me, Leroy, Chief, and James Waller. I don't know why they chose me, because I was the youngest of the bunch. All these guys are older than I am. I mean,
Not true, not true.
about 6 or 7 years. The only reason they thought I would be a good elder was because I had gone to Alabama Christian and graduated and had gone out and preached for a year, and then I was in Birmingham. But I was impressed when we had our 60th Street report how much the church gave and did. When Leroy and James and Chief and I became elders, guess what? We were broke. We were broke. We would go down on Monday nights, and we would have elders meetings that started at 7 o'clock, and sometimes at 1 o'clock we would leave, trying to figure out things and do things, and it was tough. And of course, we had Brother Jerry then that could, he was a little older than us, or about the same age as them. He was older than me. But we got to where we could not even pay our bills. Now, I know y'all can't believe that, but it was true. And Ansel was our secretary, or our treasurer. Remember that?
I remember it well.
And he'd come in there and report to the elders. He said, well, I took the bills and I threw them up in the air, and the one that hit the floor first got paid. And he was telling the truth. He was telling the truth. Well, we had a lady, and this can add to John's power of one. We had a lady there by the name of Mary Rogers. She was a sitter. She didn't make much money, but do you know, she came to us and she says, and the prices that he was talking, you know, $95 a week for the preacher and all that, you would think that we could pay our bills. But she loaned the church $5,000 and got us out of debt. And from then on, we went up. Now, that's the power of one. That's where somebody that didn't have a whole lot of money, but she came and she offered what she had. Now, we gave her a bond for that money, and we did pay her back. But if it hadn't been for that, I don't know what we would have done at that point. But thank goodness, and thank the Lord for Mary Rogers. And she was a great lady. And since then, we have moved forward, and we've had some great years, and we're going to continue to have great years, because this congregation is a evangelistic congregation, and it wants to teach the truth. Thank you.
I remember one time she came and needed a receipt because she had given to the church more money than she made, and Internal Revenue Service wouldn't accept it. She had to get a letter from the church to do it. Okay.
Only thing I was going to point out.
Turn it on.
The only thing I want to do is point out the fact that there was criticism of us being young, being appointed elders, but 9 years after we were appointed, we moved into this facility right here where we're sitting. It was the lowest point ever in the history of the church whenever we were appointed.
One thing I got to say about being young is look at whose hair, and look who's got hair. But anyway, how old's your grandkid? Mine's 13. Brother Ed, you were
a late bloomer.
Oh yeah, before Brother Ed, I do want to say one thing. It's not as clear as it is down here. That sign up there, the sign that's off to the side, 1973, I believe. Amanda was a baby. The sign went out, and I'm down there working on that sign. Brother McDade's on top of the building on the side over here, the flat part, doing something up there. And I'm on a step ladder, and that thing turned over and caught my leg between the steps and broke it. And I hollered, Brother McDade, I broke my leg. And he stuck his head over and he said, what? I said, I broke my leg. He said, no, you didn't. I said, Brother McDade, my foot's like this.
Well, I have a little bit different, not necessarily concerning the building, but what happened to me at Woodlawn is what I remember. It was a Wednesday evening, and I was ushering in the middle, in the back there, and the young men were giving their lads to leaders talks, as they do nowadays. Tony Price was up there, and he was talking, and he had something to say about the little train that goes up the hill and says, I think I can, I think I can. But he applied Ephesians 4:13. Now, let me tell you why that's important. At that time, I had been smoking cigarettes for 25 years. And I quit. It was easy to quit. I quit 5 or 6 times. But I couldn't stay quit. And he applied Ephesians 4:13. And I said, he's talking to me. Tony's telling me the answer to my problem. And I remembered what my older brother had said concerning that. He said, Romans 12:1 and 2, renewing the mind. Make up your mind, he said, you want to quit. And I had made my mind up, but I couldn't quit. And at that moment, I stood back there and I said silently to myself, Dear God, you have a problem. I don't have a problem anymore. You have a problem. I want to quit, and you and your son are going to be chief in my life. Would you believe it? From that second, that moment on, I never desired to touch another cigarette or any tobacco products. And I give that credit to Tony Price. Thank you.
Place I work for tax exempt, and I got a little card at Walmart. You can buy it tax exempt. And this guy in front of me bought a carton of cigarettes and a pack of beer. And I walked up and told the girl, I said, when they get 35 cents a pack, I'm quitting. And I forgot to give her the card, and then she had to ring it up again. She wasn't too happy about that, Anybody else got any memories? Miss Marilyn.
Making announcements. And he said, Brother Jerry, nobody is going to forget your telephone number. It was 595-1617. And that was because that weekend Auburn had beat Alabama 17-16. So he said, and to this day, I have always remembered Brother Jerry's telephone number, 595-1617.
I want to say a couple of things right quick. You get to think about it, there's so many things, so many memories that I have about the church there at Woodlawn on 53rd Street. But a couple of things to remember. First of all, I want to say something about Ansel. Ansel kept emphasizing here that he did not set up chairs at Fox Hall, and he's right, he didn't. The elders felt he was too old for that kind of work.
Can't get nothing on Tim.
Two things that I do remember. One of them is one of the classes we had. Now, I was baptized when I was 17, the summer of my junior year. Jerry came my senior year in '66. But we had a class that was for the men, and it was to help people learn to develop speaking abilities, and so someone have to have a talk. They would be assigned a topic and speak on it, and somebody else in the class had to critique them. One of our elders at that time was Brother Ed Anderson, and he was speaking, and his critiquement had been given over to John Fitzgerald. Now, John was the same age as I was. We were both seniors in high school at that time. And Brother Anderson smoked all of his life, I guess. And because of that, he coughed quite a bit. And during his talk, every once in a while, come. So when John got up to critique him, he said, Brother Anderson, he said, I think the best thing to do to help you in your speech if you'd quit smoking. And I thought, here is a young man my age, 18 years old maybe at that time, talking to an elder and telling me I need to quit smoking. I can't believe it. The other thing I wanted to mention,
I remember him saying that.
Yeah.
I remember him saying that.
I am not sure about all of the timing of all of this, but I do remember we had a meeting down at Woodlawn, and we met over the alcove or on the right, and I'm not sure whether it was on a Sunday we met, maybe in the afternoon before services or just when it was. But the meeting was because there was some concern by members of the church. This was a time of racial conflicts in the city of Birmingham. My senior years when Woodlawn had been integrated, the year before that West End High School had been, and I remember a lot of their students came over to Woodlawn High School and were trying to get us to come out and support them and leave school, and a lot of people did. But because of that, there were some fears by members of the church that the church itself might be bombed if we invited black people in for services. And that meeting, at that time about that, I remember Brother Jerry spoke to us, and he said as far as he was concerned, he couldn't think of a better place to be when you go meet God than in that church building. He said, now, I do not believe that our building is going to be bombed, but if it is, I can't believe it would be any better place to leave this earth to go to be with God than right here. And the elders made a decision that if any black individual wanted to come and worship with us, and they wanted to come to worship, not to have some kind of protest or whatever, just to come worship, they would be welcomed. And from that time on, as far as I know, they were welcome and still are. Yes.
Oscar P. Romine, I know representing the elders from the pulpit, made a statement, said if anyone comes here and wants to worship, they will be permitted to do so.
Two people I really remember being baptized, and one of them is Tim Shoemaker. He was handed a brochure was left on your door, and then John Hunt. I remember those in particular. When John Hunt came in, there must have been 10 people asked him for a study or so on. Anybody else have anything? Brian?
I wanted to talk to y'all tonight about the merits of public television. It's a joke. Gary, can I have the next slide, please? This is, you'll recognize this as the pen and ink drawing that appeared on the bulletin for 26 or so years. This is the photo, but the next slide is the pen and ink drawing that was on the bulletin. And I'm going to try to tell you how we got here. This location was not the first choice. There it is. The Woodlawn congregation for years had desired a new building. When we were at 60th Street, we were worshiping in an 1890 wooden building. and for years had wanted to move to a better location and a better building. But first, their priority was to establish the East Lake Church, or the 77th Street Church. So in 1949, after they built the building and established the 77th Street congregation, they made a real focused effort to start saving for a new church building for themselves. So in 1949, the congregation, the elders, went to First Avenue South and 59th Street and bought property for a new location with the intent of building on that location, First Avenue and 59th Street. If you know anything about the Woodlawn area, you know there's an apartment complex that's been there since the 50s that was ultimately built on that location. And there's a moral to this story, or a lesson in this story, I think. In June of 1952, the church had 3 elders, but all 3 of those elders moved away, and so the eldership at the old Woodlawn Church was disestablished. And 4 men who had been deacons were asked to continue taking care of the affairs of the church. They weren't deacons anymore, they were just men that the congregation trusted. And so they asked them to carry on the routine affairs of the church, but if anything major or significant came up, to please bring it before the entire congregation. So we had bought this property in 1949. Well, by 1952, the congregation began thinking that this is really not the location where we need to be. First Avenue and 59th Street South. Number one, it's not a good visible location. And number 2, there was no parking. And one of the main problems at the 60th Street congregation was no parking. People had to park as far away as 2 blocks on First Avenue to get parking. So the congregation began to talk in 1952, and remember, or early 1953, the eldership had been disbanded in June of 1952. And so a series of congregational meetings were held, and they were open to everybody, and this issue of are we fixing to relocate to the right place came up. And they discussed it openly, everybody could speak, everybody could talk. So a decision was made to start looking for other locations or another location as an option of where to move other than First and 59th. Well, a group of 6 men were asked to go out and look at options of where we might move other than First Avenue and 59th, where we already had bought the property. Well, this group of 6 men went off in the spring of 1953 and looked and looked and looked, and they found this piece of property that we ultimately moved to on First Avenue and 53rd Street in Woodlawn there. A prime piece of property. The main thing about this piece of property was it had a huge field behind it that would park 100 cars, a grass field, for those of you that remember. And so another series of meetings were held, and everybody was given the opportunity to talk. And so a decision was made at a meeting in March of 1953 to pursue this piece of property where the church was ultimately relocated. Everybody was given an opportunity to talk, and there were 22 men at the meeting, and they were all given the chance to vote as to what they would like to pursue, the existing property or go after this piece of property at 5328 First Avenue. 21 of the 22 men voted, we need to pursue this location on First Avenue and 53rd Street. And so this group of 6 men were empowered to go out and start negotiating to buy this other piece of property other than one we had. They did all this while there was no eldership. And I'm certainly not in any way advocating no eldership. That's not what the Lord intends. But this was a period of time where some people felt strongly that we should continue to pursue and build at the piece of property on First Avenue South. Others felt that wasn't the right solution. We needed to be where we were very visible on First Avenue North. which was the main east-west thoroughfare, and we had to have room for parking. And so this group of 6 men went and started to negotiate for this piece of property on First Avenue. The truth is, we bought the parking lot, the large field, 2 months before we ever bought the property on First Avenue. The owners of the property on First Avenue were much more hardball than the owners of the field behind the property. We paid $2,500 for this large field that would park 100 cars. The owners of the 2 lots on First Avenue played real hardball, and then finally they said to us, each one of these 2 lots will be $10,500, take it or leave it. The church had enough money in the building fund to buy one of the 2 lots and the field behind for $2,500. Members of the congregation gave or loaned the church $8,000, and we got a $2,500 bank loan to buy the other lot. And I think the moral of the point to me that was so enriching was, at a time when there was no eldership, and it could have been a very contentious issue of not moving to the original location that we had planned to, but to buy property at another location, everything was done with such cooperation and courtesy and diplomacy that it just amazed me to read about all this. Now, luckily, in November of '53, the eldership was reestablished with Brother Taggart and Brother Felix McDonald. But 2 things impressed me. The level of cooperation that everybody in the congregation showed when they were trying to decide where to relocate to. Ultimately, 4 years before the building was ever built, they decided to buy this piece of property. And 2, the fact that they had to decide quickly to buy these 2 lots they were offered, take it or leave it, and they came up with $8,000 within the congregation to finance buying those 2 pieces of property. To me, that was just a great story when you pieced all this together and you read about it. And that's how we came to be, not on First Avenue and 59th Street, but First Avenue North and 53rd Street, where we stayed for 26 years. I have another story if I got 1 minute.
Let me say this, on the left side, Brother Taggart had a bookstore, and then further up was a car lot, and then on the other side was about 3 or 4 houses, and we eventually bought all that, tore those houses down, made a parking lot.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
For kids who lived in Woodlawn, this large field behind the church building, which was our parking lot, was one of the main places to play. Softball, baseball, football, after school, fly kites. Some people learned to drive on this big field. Somebody within the Woodlawn Church of Christ, I don't know if somebody complained about the field being muddy when they got out of their car to walk to church, but somebody within the church structure made an agreement with Alabama Power to get a lot of coal cinders that Alabama Power had used to generate power, and they got these truckloads of cinders and spread all over that parking lot. Well, that may have helped the muddy walking situation, but it was terrible for kids to play. It did give you great incentive not to get tackled or knocked down in football, because your elbows out of your shirt or your pants would be torn out, and then you'd be in real trouble with your mother when you got home, and you'd be in trouble again when you went to school with patched jeans because they'd ridicule you. You remember that? But I would like to know who decided to cover that parking lot with those coal cinders. They were detrimental to the welfare of the kids playing on the parking lot. Leroy, do you know anything about that?
Didn't somebody get a jaw broken playing?
Oh, yeah. A lot of kids got injured back there.
Somebody I read about got their jaw broken. I think. Okay, anybody?
Yeah, we did. That
Any-
piece of property that we had purchased for $7,000 to build on First Avenue and 59th Street, we sold it for $10,000. So we actually got our profit.
Anybody else have anything? Thank you very much. Marilyn has a story she wants to tell.
You know, Herman King and his wife. Okay. Well, I was visiting her one day, and she got to talking about her and Herman when they were high school sweethearts. And she said, I don't know where it was, but there were some steps, and he would take her to these steps, and she would walk up them. And she said, and I always made sure when I walked up those steps that he could see my pantaloons. That was Mary King. Mary King saying that.
Ansel, can I tell a real short personal story? The old Woodlawn building was a great place to meet a potential husband or wife. When I was living in Birmingham, I was single, and Steve was living in Birmingham. He was single, and we both came to Woodlawn to church. So one Sunday morning, we were sitting in class, and I think Dennis Bailey was a teacher of that class. Anyway, we were sitting in class, and the teacher said, the Central Church is going to have a get-together for young singles Friday night, and would y'all like to go? And if anyone needs a ride, let me know. And I raised my hand and said, I'll need a ride. Steve looked over at me and said, you've got a ride. And he's been taking me everywhere ever since.
During church, and they skipped church so that when it let out, they came back and just blended in with everybody. Gina can verify that, but they should have fixed the bathroom where the boys couldn't crawl out. Okay, I stand corrected.
I was too scared to skip.
They were in front of the building. I didn't remember a window being in there.
Yeah, I don't remember a window.
They were right in the front.
But I was too scared to skip, so I would wait till class was over, and then I'd run as fast as I could to see if he saved me a sip of his Coke. But I guess a couple of my favorite memories is about 5 years old and sitting with Priscilla, my sister, that she was good friends with, Janice, and Priscilla would hold me in her lap and play with my hair till I fell asleep. I remember playing hide and go seek with John Eason and Carrie Jenkins and doing things we probably shouldn't be doing, but running around and playing and stuff. And I always loved it when my mother got to do the Lord's Supper because we would sneak and get some of the grape juice and the crackers. I said, the things I remember I probably shouldn't be telling, but that's, being the baby and two brothers I tagged along with all the time. So
You said you wasn't going to tell it.
my good sisters that were good influences, they had already moved on and went to another church by that time. So who was it always had the gum? Was that Brother King? Who always gave out the chewing gum at church? Stood in the back and handed all the kids. Chaton, okay. That's another good memory.
I was 14 when I went to Woodlawn, and it was 1971, and we were going to have a youth trip, and there was a handful of us, and we went in cars, and I think we went to Wedowee or Wedowee. We had fun saying those, yeah. And I rode up with Herman King, and we had a really nice conversation, and it was just, I was just getting started had just been baptized and just getting started into the youth group, if you will, and we would go down on Monday nights, and John Hunt would carry us in his Volkswagen bus over to Baptist Montclair Hospital, and we'd visit people. And then he'd take us around on another night, and we'd pick up food. And that was our food drive. And we just had a lot of busy young people, you know, maybe from what I can remember, 12, 13, 14 of us. And we just would go to church all the time, and we would just get together all the time, and it was just a lot of good memories. And I was in that youth group until I was 17, and then I started working, and then moved away. And it's just, then I came back to Birmingham, and Roebuck was here. So that was my memories of Woodlawn.
I can remember after Brother Jenkins had been there a while, and he had a lot of people knew him from everywhere, and we was having a singing school was going to be in about 66 or 67, somewhere along there. And Brother Jenkins had talked to Pat Boone, and Pat Boone had promised him that he'd be at singing school. And so I was working at Eastwood Mall at that time. So I was telling all the kids and their parents they need to come to singing school that summer. I said singing school. One of them senior mistakes. One of them vacation Bible schools is what it was. But anyway, Pat Boone didn't show up. He called cancel out. So then all them people that I was working with and promised them when I had to eat crow for a while because Pat Boone didn't show up.
Well, I don't know if y'all remember or not. We, with Mamie and Jerry, we had a women's and a men's softball team. And I'm sure that several of the ladies remember it. I believe I was the youngest one on the team, so I got to play shortstop. And we really had a lot of fun, you know, playing with different people. And I remember Jerry and Mamie would always have us over, you know, for parties and things. And he would always get a group of us young people, and we'd go to shut-ins. And I know we were awful singers, but they couldn't get away.
Okay, thank you very much. We're on our way to 100 years, so thank you very much. A lot of memories. Go back to the other one. Go back to the other side. Skip's got them moved. Okay.
This must have been a class project.
I don't know. There's a bunch of girls here.